Investing in cannabis stocks or psychedelic stocks? What's the difference? Find out now. All right, welcome to the Dales Report. And on the podcast today, we have the CEO of Revitalist Lifestyle and Wellness, Kathryn Walker, back to the podcast. How are things?
Going great. How are you?
Good. It's great to connect again. Life is good in Tennessee, I assume.
It is. We're getting to fall, and we're football season, as you know. It's a pretty hot thing in Tennessee.
Yeah. Go Titans. Go Vols, right?
There you go.
Last time we spoke, I want to get my viewers caught up to speed again because I know this psychedelic industry, still a lot of people very interested in the space. The investment side has been, needless to say, a little slow, obviously, and that's an understatement over the last 6 months. But hearing some good things on the near-term horizon and how this will grow. Your company specifically, I find very interesting because it's one of the few companies that's already generating revenue within this space, which is not common for a psychedelic company. But you plan to roll out as many as 120 clinics over the next 2 years. So maybe just touch on from what we talked about in our last interview for a quick refresher and talk about just the optimism and some of the feedback that you're receiving on a day-to-day basis that gets you excited about obviously expanding to 120 clinics the next 24 months.
Yeah, so, as you know, it's a pretty exciting, quickly moving kind of ground here. And the neat thing that I've learned, since being around the space and being around the institutions and such, investors, it seems that people may be a little camera shy almost with investing in psychedelics because it does mimic cannabis a little bit. So I think that's a transitioning phase right now. And one thing that's really neat is that sets psychedelics apart as compared to cannabis is the research. So, it's one of those things with everything that's moving quickly with the bankers and marketers and things, and they're seeing like the research, and this is going to be a huge financial opportunity for a lot of investors. You see that, yes. Is it mirroring somewhat what cannabis did? Yes. But the way it differentiates is the psychedelic component is able to be proven research-wise, which is exactly what our traditional system wants to hear. So insurance companies, politicians, all your regulators, everyone who makes the laws, they want to know why. Show me why. Tell me how it can keep people safe. Tell me how it can address, every crisis that we have going on right now. And how can it save the system money? How can it put people back into work? It can do all these things.
So do you think that's the big stumbling block right now for cannabis and why it's been slow as far as legislation? And saying that, if you are a lot further ahead when it comes to research, do you see a lot of this medicine being legislated a lot quicker than, say, cannabis, knowing that you're further ahead when it does come to research?
I do, yeah. So that's the piece with cannabis where she kind of wasn't able to prove, a lot of the things. Tell me why. Tell me, show me what are the results in 10, 20 years. And the studies just aren't out there. We use ketamine a lot with the clinics that we have, and it's been around for over 50 years. So you've got over 50 years of research, and people are even saying, well, ketamine's not been around long enough to research these things. Ketamine is the most globally researched medication in the world, and it's by all your big institutions.
Ketamine's been researched extensively for 50 years, you're saying?
Yeah, so it was actually approved by the FDA in 1970.
Okay.
So it actually had started before 1970 to start on the FDA approval process. So it's probably been around almost 60 years.
Wow.
And how does ketamine, why are we looking at ketamine, and why are we looking at, these other psychedelics, like they're going to act like ketamine? Do you know what ketamine comes from?
What?
PCP, angel dust.
Right.
One of the godfather biggest hallucinogenics out there. So, so ketamine's actually 1/50th the strength of what PCP is. So they actually saw PCP had all these good qualities back in the 1950s. They took it to a lab and they made ketamine from it. So all these things, we're trying to almost maybe reinvent the wheel, and really we need to just go back to the 1950s, almost 100 years ago, and maybe look at what they did and how can we polish that.
Well,
and that's how we get along, because to get ketamine FDA approved, they went through the entire traditional system. So everyone sees all the excitement. But we also need to remember the traditional system is not going to just pack up its bags and go away. We have to have the right people that are able to understand the traditional system and able to bridge the two accordingly. And that's how we kind of separate ourselves, as Revitalist is we're
Right.
able, our providers know that traditional space. They know what it takes. They understand the FDA trials. They understand, every piece of it. And that's going to be necessary.
So you've got the team in place to meet with lobbyists in Washington, insurance companies. Like, I'd like to get a better idea as to what your network is. And, you talk about research being a lot further ahead compared to cannabis. So how do you see this, I guess, all playing out, knowing that you have the proper team in place? You have a very aggressive expansion role coming up in the next 18 to 24 months. And most importantly, too, what is your network that gives you an indication that this is like, going to be a company or an industry, I should say, for that matter, that's going to grow substantially?
I think you have to look at all those things. You have to categorize it accordingly. I think that's what we're doing as well. So, a lot of companies may go out and they may try to acquire because it's a hot space, and it's exciting to have some type of hope in the mental health and the pain industries. So, what we're doing with the companies is we're developing the infrastructure to where our leadership clinics can actually be mentors to the other clinics and create just a overall cascading effect to where, we have 5 clinics open right now. Those 5 clinics are getting off their feet to where each of those clinics can help to be the mentors of additional clinics that they open, to where hopefully those clinics can open 1 to 2. The leadership clinics can have 1 to 2 clinics that they're mentoring at one time. So we're seeing that, duplication process grow immensely, and that's how we'll get to our goals that way. But then also, the people that we have with these clinics, state to state, they're from that state. They understand the state laws. So federal laws, yes, are great, but the state laws actually trump the federal laws.
Right.
So, and that's one thing that you have to understand. Every time you go to a different state, it's almost like going to a different country, and you have to understand the laws as to how they want to be heard and deciphered and everything else. So the neat thing is when we open up these additional clinics and we have local people that are already leaders in that state space, they're going to be the ones who are utilizing the knowledge and experience that they have. So that's one, really big piece that will help with this. And, we're looking at even the revenues with the clinics. Like once we're maximally operating, we're looking at having a gross revenue of $7 million per clinic.
Okay.
And even with 5 clinics right now, that's $35 million a year once we get up and fully operational. And
$7 million
and the growth
per clinic.
is exciting.
Wow. When I look at ketamine, 50 years of research, a lot more research obviously being done there versus cannabis. Do you think this will be federally legalized at some point in the U.S., ketamine?
I do. I think what we have to differentiate is, the hotness of the topic of, when states decriminalize something, that's exciting, yes, that they decriminalize something, but that doesn't mean that your medical provider is going to go out and prescribe it for you. So that medical provider still has to recognize, like, they still have a license and they still have certain accountability aspects, So once it gets decriminalized, yes, that's a step in the right direction. But it gives a little bit of false hope sometimes because we'll have people that come to the medical providers and say, hey, it's decriminalized, right?
They don't understand the difference between legalization and decriminalization, right?
Right. Big difference. I mean, think about fentanyl. Fentanyl is prescribed all the time, but it's not decriminalized.
Right.
But providers will prescribe that. So there's just a really big bridge that needs to take place from the traditional system, which not necessarily is a bad system. It's just so old and broken that it needs to be grossly and quickly updated. And then you've got the new system here. Guys, like, this is so exciting. This evidence, we've never seen results like this.
Yeah.
So when we see this and we take it to the traditional system, you have to have those people who can bridge it. And that will be in my company who can help with that. We have all those people. We have the lobbyists.
Great.
We have people across all 50 states that are ready to help in any capacity that we need because they see the change and the difference that we're going to make, not only in these clinics, but to the entire healthcare space. So it's needed.
Yeah, last week Elon Musk was on, and I don't want to focus too much on like what he said, like, yes, psychedelics belongs in the future of what we're doing as far as medicine, which is great. But he did make a point about how as we see older lawmakers transition into newer ones, you've got the right people in place. But do you think a lot of the stumbling block right now as far as moving forward is it a generational thing?
Sure it is. I mean, and that's the same way, with everything that goes on in life. It's the way that we're taught, in schools, medical schools, nursing schools and such. The textbooks that they have, they're already outdated before they're teaching people on
Yeah, I
things.
know. Yeah.
So it just takes a second to get everything updated. And this field's growing so fast and so quickly. I almost feel outdated if I didn't read this article from the day before, because there's just so much, excitement in the space. So, yeah, I mean, legislative wise, hopefully all that will slowly start changing as well. But, you have to look at it. They're just in session once a year for a few months, to where they're actually voting on changes in laws. And if it doesn't get approved that year, you have to wait a whole nother year to get this done. So, the system's very antiquated, and we'll figure it out. But you know what? It has to be broken in order for people to change it.
Well, it's going to be,
or to want to change it.
and a big priority, I would think. Like, I know some of this stuff has been put on the back burner, and there's a lot of things that the government has to address right now. But mental health has to be at the forefront during here of COVID. Do you not think?
Absolutely. And I mean, the thing about it though is, do they know how to address it? And they don't. And I will firmly say this. I mean, most of the psychiatric medications that are out there are just about 30% effective. And then, other treatments that are out there, maximally, they're 50% effective. So, unfortunately, some of the studies say that placebo is just as effective as a medication in the mental health space. So what does that do? That really makes us not want to do anything about our mental health sometimes, because I might just be better off not taking anything. But when you actually have something like psychedelics that are showing it's actually breaking the cycle and giving people full recovery, like MDMA with PTSD, where you got people who are not even meeting the diagnostic criteria for PTSD anymore.
I know.
3 months out. Like, it's changed our whole thought process. We've told people mental health is out of your control.
Yeah.
It's not out of our control.
Yeah.
We're actually proving that we can build the structure of our brain, much like we can build the muscles in our body. So yeah, it's changing.
It's great.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, that does sound exciting. Last thing I wanted to ask you before we let you go. You obviously talked about last time we were on the big rollout plan of 120 clinics. You also made news this week about, and I guess kind of complementing that strategy, is the intent to acquire a ketamine clinic in Richmond, Virginia, that you announced this week. It fits into your strategy, as I said, as well. You added a gentleman by the name of Dr. Randy Frederick, a board-certified emergency medicine physician, and he will actually plan to utilize his medical license to obviously expand the overall growth of future clinics. So how exactly does that all work? And is that a big advantage that you have, I guess, in comparison to if there is really much of a competition for you right now? But if there is, how much of an advantage is that for you?
Yeah, so Dr. Frederick and I, we go back a few years with common strategies and trying to lead the way and trying to understand, the sciences and stuff. So, my background being in anesthesia and psychiatry, yes, it's complementary, and that, there are anesthesia providers and psychiatric providers, but then also, the emergency room or the emergency department physicians, they're also trained very well with ketamine, and then they're trained with adults and pediatrics, to where if you see the studies with a lot of the ketamine studies right now are actually showing improvement in autism and Tourette's in the pediatric population.
Wow.
So, so having him come in and understanding the acute, it's just a different angle. And that's what I'm doing with this company, is every time we get something coming on board, when it comes to the surface, how can we actually be the experts in that? So having Dr. Frederick, being a ER physician with us and helping to advance that knowledge with emergency medicine is just another, it's another gold star for us. So yeah, he'll be a great person to help lead in any capacity that we need him. But two, he believes in the thoroughness and the solidity that we have as a company. So, there's him, and then we've got a lot of the critical care physicians and surgeons, and we're ready to make a big change.
How does it work then with his license that he can use as far as fast tracking and expanding more clinics? Like, how does that all work?
So it's different. So like with the nursing field, so like my license, there's actually, I can go to, over over 13 states with just one license. So it's a compact state license. So I can go and work in the state of North Carolina and actually be recognized as a provider. Dr. Frederick actually has that as an ER physician to where he can go to several states as well and still be recognized as that, so that it will help us to streamline our growth much more quickly, to where we can utilize his licensure, and then we still have the CRNAs and such that are leading the clinics and leading on the ground, but we can utilize his expertise to streamline the process.
It's great. Right people in place. Sounds like I said, right medical team, a great plan as far as expansion. At the same time, too, great connection, which is going to be a big thing with insurance companies. So a company that's already generating revenue in the psychedelic industry. It's great. Appreciate you taking the time to connect with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, let's keep in touch, Kathryn. Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for watching. And make sure to like this video, and please feel free to leave a comment. Also, subscribe to this channel and turn on the notifications bell to receive all new videos posting featuring stocks that are moving in the crypto, psychedelic, and cannabis space, and also notifications on monthly cash giveaways. You don't want to miss it. Thanks, everyone.